by 2030, FemTech is going to be at least a $50 billion industry.
I saw $1 trillion industry at some point.
Trillion, based on the male physiology. They excluded women because women's physiology is so variable. There's actually an entire Reddit thread that says, UltraHuman found my PCOS before my physician did.
There's a lot of money to be made. 51% of the population has been underserved.
There's two things that I really want to highlight.
Hey friends, this special women's health series is sponsored by Groe Solutions, and I couldn't appreciate their support any more than I do. So 9 years I owned and operated gyms, and I know firsthand how much time gets eaten by fragmented systems and admin chaos. Grow fixes that. One actionable operating system that helps you streamline operations, support your staff, and actually improve member experience. Your coaches belong on the floor. They do not belong buried in disconnected tools. It's a good product. It's great people. Please take some time to go check them out. It's groe.solutions. That's GROE.solutions. And before we get into the interview, you're going to know something a little bit different about this series. So Alan, the founder and CEO of Groe Solutions, dedicated this series to 3 women in his life. And so right after this, you'll hear that dedication, then we'll get into the interview. So take a moment, appreciate it, let it sink in, and enjoy the show. Thank you.
Hello, this episode is dedicated to my daughters, Hannah and Ellie. I never thought perfect was possible, but then 2 wonderful lights came into my life, and perfect is the only word I can think of to describe the feeling of the pride and joy I have in getting to see your lights grow brighter every day. But I know I can't protect that light like the way I would want to, but you can. So always remember, the greatest thing you can know is yourself. And I hope this episode helps you remember that and frame your mindset going forward. I love you.
All right, here we go. Anaelle Oiknine, welcome to the Future of Fitness. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks
are
for
you
fitting.
doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm doing really good. I'm excited for our conversation. I know you've been traveling to and fro, a lot of conferences to start off 2026. So I'm glad we're able to sneak this into your schedule. This is going to be the first in a 3-part series of focus on women's health, which is obviously a very powerful topic brought to you, the listeners, by Groe Solutions. Thank you very much to Groe for helping us put this together. It's a topic that, you know, if you're not a woman, and I'm not, you know, women in your life, right? Women around you, you work with them, you live with them, you were raised by them. And there's a lot of opportunity now and advancements in women's health. It's extremely fast growing. The evolution of this research field and products and services and all the things that go along with that is astronomical. I think a good place to start, Anaelle, in this series is, if you don't mind, maybe set the table for us. Like, why are we here? Like, what happened? Where did all the research go? Why is this growing so fast all of a sudden?
I think that instead of asking where the research went, I think we should ask, why did no research occur?
All right.
I first want to just highlight that a majority of the medications out there, of physiological exercise prescriptions, of the way that we measure sleep, VO2 max, all of these things are based on the male physiology. And I went back to go see the actual NIH policy, in which they shifted from a guidance to a proper ask to include women in clinical trials. It wasn't until 1989. So the policy was issued by the NIH through the Office of Research on Women's Health. And they essentially excluded women because women's physiology is so variable. We're different each month. We have, fluctuating hormones. And the one thing that they were trying to control out of clinical trials was the one thing that they should have focused in their clinical trials. If we have the most variable bodies, we should be the ones that are most focused on when we're experimenting drugs. There's 2 things that I really want to highlight that I think are major fails because of this exclusion of women, because we were trying to standardize and push drugs to market so fast. The first is the Thalidomide tragedy. Now, I first learned about this in my organic chemistry classes years ago, and we were looking at how the molecule reacts in men versus in pregnant women. Now, this was a sedative that was marketed specifically for morning sickness for pregnant women in the 1950s. Now, in men, it was a very nice sedative. It calmed them down. It removed nausea. And that's why it was allowed to go through the FDA and be put on the market and marketed this way. However, they didn't include any woman in this clinical trial. Though when you went to the pharmacy to pick up the medication, it literally was marketed for morning sickness. Now, what does thalidomide do? It's a human tetragen, so it causes massive birth defects. If any listeners out there, have the interest and the heart, like I'm just putting like a caution, it is one of the saddest birth defect situations that I've ever seen, but this drug was widely used and pushed by providers onto women for morning sickness during pregnancy, and it literally directly causes birth defects, like Accutane isotretinoin. So now we have new regulations around certain medications that need to be used, in conjunction with birth control. But the fact that we specifically excluded women and then marketed towards women, it's tragic. It's really tragic. The other thing is this big disconnect on what medical regulators and like the FDA regulatory body views as like a positive outcome measure for women's medications versus what's actually possible in terms of research. And what I really want to highlight is this like endometriosis case. So endometriosis is one of the most vastly prevalent, also underdiagnosed women's health conditions that causes severe and debilitating pain year-round, pretty much all throughout the month. However, we never really put the time and energy and money into figuring out what endometriosis is, how endometriosis is caused, and how we can help women with endometriosis. In the past couple of years, there has been a big push towards research and drug development to help these women because the pain is so debilitating. However, here's the mismatch. There's a few layers to it, and it's really interesting. The first is that the only animal model that researchers can use for endometriosis that kind of makes sense is mice. Now, I've worked with fruit flies, I've worked with zebrafish, I've worked with mice. Let me tell you, none of them can tell you if they're in pain. We have ways to find out if they're in pain. But if endometriosis, pain, is what we're trying to go after, let's have, something that kind of makes more sense. So we have to induce endometriosis in mice to study endometriosis. The big hiccup is that the FDA's positive outcome measure for a drug to be approved with the intended use of endometriosis and to be reimbursed for the intended use of endometriosis is that it relieves pain. If we're going to do this in mice, that doesn't make sense. So there is no naturally occurring animal model that has endometriosis. So we're shifting towards organoid models. Now, this is really smart because you can make an organoid model out of menstrual blood. And menstrual blood is far and wide available and very free, very low cost. Organoids are the perfect place to move into. But once again, if the FDA is going to have pain be the positive outcome measure for the trial and for reimbursement, shouldn't we have an organ model that can show pain? Or let's have the regulators talk with researchers and realize that the positive outcome measure needs to actually line up with what we can do in a lab. So even though we're like entering this space or this time where we're starting to put so much time and energy and honestly love, there's so much love in the women's health research world, there's still hiccups all over the place if you look deep enough. There's just so many mismatches.
That was super interesting. I mean, I love the concrete storytelling too on some of the cases to give people an idea of, because I think those are really good cases. I mean, and you could probably multiply that type of story over decades and decades and decades of research. And, I think I've heard a lot of different arguments with why this may have happened, right? Maybe they thought men were more dispensable during research at one period of time, right? Like, or I don't know. Who knows? We weren't there, right? I'm curious because maybe we should back up a little bit. How did you find such a big interest in this? Like you personally, like I'm going to say relative to myself, you're young in your career, right?
Yeah.
And you seem to be, working with UltraHuman, doing a lot of different things. You seem to really have honed in on this. What was the starting point for that?
Actually, it started when I was 3 years old. I will never forget.
Way back. All right.
Way back. It's truly my first, fully pictured memory in my mind. My grandma was a physician back in Morocco, and she would often watch surgery videos just to understand and study, what's up and coming in the medical field. And she was sitting in the living room watching a birth one day. I was 3 years old. I sat on her lap and I thought it was literally the coolest thing in the world. I shocked everybody. I think most 3-year-olds would find a birth either scary or disgusting or start to ask so many questions of how a baby even got in there. But I became absolutely obsessed. So I really did all of my studies from that point forward to become a physician. I did 5 years of pre-med, and I did some evolutionary biology research specifically on the female pelvis and the changing biomechanics and the different forms of energy optimization, and how that ties into encephalization, which is this idea that the woman's or the baby's brain is getting bigger throughout evolution. So I really have geared all of my research and studies towards women's health. And so I moved down to San Diego to start my studies to become an OBGYN and to get into that track. And once I realized that there is such a black box in the medical field, I decided to shift to this side of medicine. Most women see their OBGYN once a year, and we come in with complaints. We get a pap smear, we get a prescription, and we wait a year. And I just did not like the way that the system is operating for women. There's not enough OBGYNs. Every woman needs to be seen. Every woman needs to be seen at different points in their menstrual cycle, and that changes every week, essentially. So I became really obsessed with understanding how we can develop data streams that are continuous, that kind of close this black box for patients to be understood between doctors' visits. And women's health and embryology and pregnancy, this is truly like my scientific love.
I love it. I think it's great. I mean, 3 years old, that's a pretty early sign. I didn't know what I wanted to do at age 30. So I think that's pretty impressive. So when you look at like the push now, right? I've had on this podcast, Dr. Stacey Sims is obviously a big proponent of women's health. I've had a lot of really smart practitioners who have identified it. But what's the inflection point here? Like, what do you think is driving this current surge in the research, in the investment dollars, in data? Like, what's behind it?
I think there's a few factors, and I want to stay really positive in my understanding of how the market is shifting towards this investment into femtech and women's health. I would say, just for starters, there's more women at the top now. Having more women at the top means that more women are deciding where investments are going and where research needs to go, and what companies are going to actually succeed. And I think that if women weren't climbing the ladder, and that we haven't been able to climb the ladder that we have been able to in the past, 50, 60 years, even less, we wouldn't have this push. I was reading like the McKinsey report, and it said that by 2030, femtech is going to be at least a $50 billion industry. And that is pretty exciting.
I saw $1 trillion industry at some point.
Trillion. That makes me happy.
I'm going to fact check myself on that, but I've done a couple podcasts in the back where that number just blew me away. But it is. And I think there's a lot of different things. And we got to look at realistically too, like in a capitalist society, there's a lot of money to be made, right? Yeah. This 51% of the population has been underserved, and they're looking for unique solutions, right, to their unique problems and challenges, and opportunities. And that's something that I think is, obviously, it's undeniable. That's a tremendous factor as well. Talk about some of the tech. I mean, you work in data. People who aren't familiar with UltraHuman and what you do there, let's talk about that. So you're getting a front seat to a lot of data, and I'm curious like how that is driving all this as well. So maybe let's start with that. What are you doing with UltraHuman?
I do clinical development and clinical partnerships. And before I even get into explaining what that means, because it's a pretty broad hat to have, I want to highlight that UltraHuman is an entire health optimization ecosystem. So there's a wearable, the UltraHuman Ring Pro. There is blood testing service called Blood Vision. There is an at-home environmental monitor called the UltraHuman Home, designed to optimize your sleep environment. And there is a continuous glucose monitor that is a partnership with Abbott. So when it comes to partnerships, I either evaluate new data streams that would be really beneficial to cross-correlate back to all of our other data streams to have a greater understanding of the human body, or that could be algorithmic partnerships. So UltraHuman has this idea called the power plug ecosystem. So even within the UltraHuman Ring Pro, there's different vertically integrated care pathways. And through that, we partner with other companies to have a more granular view on the body. There's a few that really stand out to me. One is a partnership with FiberCheck, which is an AFib detection algorithm that's PPG based. So if a user might have a little bit of an issue with their heart, or their heart rate variability doesn't make sense, or we're seeing some irregularities in the heartbeat, then we'll nudge them to activate this additional power plug. Another one is the Cycle and Ovulation Pro. Last year, UltraHuman acquired a company that spent over a decade developing an algorithm on over 260,000 menstrual cycles through an intravaginal thermometer that they developed. This technology is the biotech OvuSense, and they developed an algorithm that can not only confirm ovulation, but predict ovulation on irregular cycles. Most wearables today, they will look at your temperature deviation day by day to kind of gauge some sort of guess on when your menstrual cycle is going to occur. The ovulation confirmation is also pretty hard when you're only looking at temperature once a day. Therefore, UltraHuman tracks your temperature continuously, and we're able to see these different issues that happen during the day, whether it is a positive ovulation confirmation or it's a regular progesterone behavior. Before I actually get into that, I do want to explain to everybody listening that there's a few hormones that fluctuate throughout the month in a woman's body, and progesterone is supposed to rise right after ovulation, and that actually changes a woman's body temperature. So that's why many wearable devices nowadays are using temperature as like a digital progesterone proxy, is the way I like to call it.
Interesting.
So they acquired this company with an FDA-cleared algorithm that is widely used in endometriosis and PCOS networks to help these women conceive. What's really cool about having it in the UltraHuman ring, though, is that they also have these novel flags. So different reproductive issues, whether it's PCOS or endometriosis, or someone who struggles with anovulation, which is the lack of the egg leaving the ovary at time of ovulation, which is infertility. These cycle flags, which are unique progesterone behaviors, are flagged to the user. So while we don't tell a user, like, you have endometriosis, we say that this progesterone curve is indicative of the research of somebody who has endometriosis. So there's actually an entire Reddit thread, which is pretty cool, that says, UltraHuman found my PCOS before my physician did. So by tracking progesterone throughout the month, throughout, the entire day, we're able to see these irregularities at a really granular level and really allow women to understand what's happening in their body besides just the date of menstruation.
I think when men have the opportunity to look at their wearable data, you look at your HRV, you look at your sleep, kind of resting heart rate, right? Not terribly complicated, really. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
I was just going to say that I think people are underestimating the power of wearables. Now wearables can stack, at least UltraHuman, through another partnership through Sleep Cycle. They will, if you opt in, of course, track your snoring and your coughing and stack that back on top of your sleep staging. There's so many abilities to screen people for possible irregularities back on top of what we consider the boring metrics that is totally invaluable. There's so much to learn.
What I've always said about wearables is this, and we're kind of getting into a golden age, is it's tracked data, it's dialed it up to people, it's served it up, but people had no idea what to do with it. So it was just this thing. It's like, okay, great. Like I know a lot of people, even people within our industry, who had a wearable for a while, and they're just like, yeah, I stopped wearing it because I'm like, I know my sleep was bad. I know this was this, and but it doesn't tell me what to do about it or how to improve it. And so what's the point of wearing it anymore? And I think this is now where we're getting to the point where the promise too of like artificial intelligence and how it's going to, really personalize that journey and take all these data points and all this research and put it all together. It's really hard to do individually, case by case, unless you have the technology lay over to do it. So I think that's one of the things I call it the now what problem. Is like, okay, we get all this data, now what? And I think that's something where, especially for women, where, there's so many unique points, as you were talking about, within time of the month or time of their life, and you can really dig down and personalize it. So when you look at like that fact of this technological point that we're coming to right now, what gets you most excited? Like paint us a picture. What is this going to look like moving forward in the future?
I think it goes outside of the user. The way that I want to see all of this data being used is to literally close this black box of the medical system. I think that there's so much that needs to happen for wearables to be seen as a valuable data point inside of the medical system, but I want it to be the longitudinal view to the patient between visits. So the way that I see it is that when people come to the doctor's office with a complaint, that means that they have an issue. They've had the issue for enough time that symptoms have appeared. They've had the symptoms for enough time that they're bothering them. And then that's when they go to the physician. Or why are we waiting for something to be so progressed before we seem to get help? At that point, we do need some sort of prescription medication to alleviate the symptoms, maybe not even get to the root cause, but to alleviate the symptoms in the moment, because that's what somebody's experiencing. If we can catch somebody at the top of the funnel before symptoms appear, before symptoms get bad, and they want to get to the root cause before they even get a prescription for the symptoms, that's how I want to see it. I also want people to feel empowered by their physiology. I don't want people to see the bad sleep score and say, oh, my life sucks. My day's going to suck. Why did I do that? Maybe they should be like, okay, was my temperature of my bedroom not optimal? Maybe I shouldn't have worn fuzzy socks last night. Maybe that overheated my
Fuzzy
body.
socks.
It's actually a huge issue for some people. It
Yeah.
really overheats the
Well,
body and you can't get into
your
good deep
your
sleep.
hands and your feet, right?
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the heat goes out. Anyway, you caught me at
Yeah.
funny socks. Carry
It's
on.
interesting. I think I just want to see this kind of data to be something that you share with medical professionals rather than something that only the user gets to see. We really need to close this black box. If we have this data, it needs to be leveraged in our medical system.
So what's the holdup? Like, why is it not, quote unquote, medical grade data? Like, what does it need
Yeah.
to be clean and unified? Does it have to be put into EMRs? Like, what's the roadblocks?
I think we could spend an hour just laying out all
Yeah, I
of the
know.
roadblocks. One, I would say that the way that the FDA works and the FDA landscape has actually changed a lot, even in just the past couple months for wearables. But we're still regulated as a medical device, which I think is really important. If we're going to give people data, we really need to differentiate and have standards and thresholds between what is medical and what is wellness. I'm very aligned there. Though by having this restriction, it forces those who are physicians to also make that distinction between what is valuable and what's invaluable. Heart rate and heart rate variability are never going to be medical grade metrics. We do take heart rate at, the doctor's office, but the heart rate that you get from a wearable is very close to the same measurement that you'll get in the doctor's office, though it's not regulated. So by having this distinction between what is valuable and invaluable, heart rate is a very valuable metric. Everybody agrees there, though it doesn't need to be regulated the same way that we're regulating SpO2 or blood pressure, for example. Those need to be cleared by the FDA to be presented to a user, but heart rate does not need to be cleared, though physicians leverage it the same that you would leverage these other metrics. So I think that there also needs to be an understanding that by putting all of these things, actually, I don't know how to phrase this well, Eric, to be honest. I need to sit on this to phrase it into a good sentence.
Well, I think what you're getting at is we haven't agreed upon the quality of the data overall, right?
Yeah,
Like that, like what
absolutely.
is like, and there's a lot of layers to that. I mean, it's like, well, where are the devices coming from, right? Who's using the devices? How are they using it? Like, it's not in a clinical setting. We don't know, like, for all we know, like I could be taking my ring off at the wrong times, right? Or, like my room is too cold or too hot, and that's going to affect my health metrics. There's just a lot of not red tape, but just like a lot of issues with it that I can see. But here's the reality of it. More and more consumers are taking their health into their own hands.
Yeah.
Right. So they're looking for ways to self-interpret the data, and they're looking for solutions, hence the rise of podcasts, right? ChatGPT had, in their announcement in ChatGPT Health, 230 million weekly inquiries about people's health, right? So you're starting to see like this is happening. And I think it's almost like, is it a top down thing where the FDA is going to have to try to regulate it? I think they're just going to be too damn slow. I think it's already happening from the bottom up. And the consumers are looking for solutions, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to meet them where they are and have solutions, whether they're good or not or valid. But that's kind of the pushing force behind it. So I think the reason why you're trying to have a hard time articulating is because it's just really overcomplicated, right? It's
It is
complicated, not
overcomplicated.
overcomplicated, right? I mean, does that make sense? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I also think that there's so much that goes into it. Like each sensor needs to be regulated,
Yes.
or understood upon. Each algorithm then needs to be, shown to the public of why it works. There's also no standardization between algorithms, and there's so many competitors out there. So how do you know what to trust? I just went to a conference at Stanford called the Consumer Healthcare Conference.
Okay.
The fact that the word consumer and healthcare are next to each other is ironic in my mind. Just shows the market that we're entering. But it really is this. It's how can we leverage data that technically is medical grade data without the regulatory stamp that it is medical grade and still get to the same positive responses? How can we help people with this kind of unregulated data? It's an interesting space that we're entering, a beautiful space.
It's a crazy time to be alive. It really
Yeah.
is. I mean, we're, whether it's good or bad, right? Like the way that technology is advancing now, the speed, just the sheer lightning speed of advancement means that regulation can't keep up. There's no way. It just can't. We can't keep up. I can't keep up with the difference between ChatGPT 5 or 4 and 5. Like, when did it happen? What's the differences? I don't know. How are they supposed to regulate that? They can't. So, and same with like wearable data. Like everyone's coming out with new wearables and they're coming out all the time. The consumers are buying them and the data's flowing in and coming in. Where's it going? We don't really know for sure. So it's just happening at a speed that I don't think anybody can really handle. And we're just going to have to, I mean, if you are willing to take control of your own health and wellness, it's a great time, right? If you're going to self-educate. But I mean, even we saw recently with peptides, right? Is like, some of these gray market peptide websites went down. I haven't tried it yet, but I guess, some of these LLMs won't answer peptide titration questions anymore.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't tested that out. Once again, like that's something like, please fact check me on that, but it was something I heard recently. So anyway, it's this really fast paced thing. And I guess for our industry, right? So we're talking to the fitness and wellness industry. What does this mean for practitioners, right? If you're a coach or a wellness, practitioner, or, maybe someone who runs a facility and you're starting to see all these advancements in women's health, like what does that mean for us and where can we start to leverage it a bit more?
The woman's menstrual cycle, or at least the hormonal fluctuations, need to finally be highlighted in training sets. I don't think it makes sense that we're, doing a Monday to Friday, like Tuesday's your slow day and Wednesday's a push and then Thursday's hit and then like Friday's a long run. That makes no sense. You need to have a push week, a calm week. You need to have a ramp up week. And then you need to have, this is going to be the best week of my month because my energy's good. My hormones are there. And then you need to have a week where you stay in bed and there's no guilt. I think that that's the first place we need to start. And there are actually some companies who are starting to leverage this kind of mentality. There's one that I recently heard of called Femi that now allows you to like input your menstrual cycle and it'll change your marathon training based on where you are in your cycle. So it's nice to super interesting. And I'm shocked, we talked about the numbers of this field and all of these devices that are coming out and all of these different angles that people are looking at the human body or the female body. And still nobody's really taking the menstrual cycle into account when we're looking at exercise routines. I actually was at HFA, which is the Health and Fitness Association, where I saw Eric actually for the first time in person. And it was really eye-opening. I was there with UltraHuman and the amount of gym, many of these big gym names who came up to me and they were like, we want to leverage your Cycle and Ovulation Pro algorithm. It was beautiful. And it was all of these men coming up to me saying, how can we leverage this data to help our customers actually help them train based on their body? And I think also a big issue correct me, Eric. I recently heard that a gym membership is the most purchased and underused thing in the United States of America. Subscription.
I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure, but it would not surprise me.
I would like to see those numbers. And I think that,
be shocked.
Horrible. Like our health is like the one thing that we all truly own. And I know that like our schedules are hard and some days it's really hard to even just get out of bed and life is hard. But your health is the one thing that you truly have. And that's something that we need to protect. And I think that if we can leverage all of this data to make it easier on people, that is the first place we should start. Some days you only really need 15 minutes of exercise. And 15 minutes of exercise does extend your lifespan. So I think that by including all of these metrics, especially with the menstrual cycle, to make it easier on the person about decision making of what to do in the gym, of when to take off days, of what to eat, of what your recovery looks like, it'll get people actually moving more and more.
It's a keen observation. I say this in the most excited way possible, is that I think what you just said, the recognition of you saying the health is the most important thing we have, that's a generational thing. If you look at my parents' generation, right, that was not a conversation. Really.
Interesting.
Not until, it was until my dad, like, let's say he had his first heart attack at age 51. It was like, oh, okay, well, I should start exercising, right? I should start doing that. We should start looking at diet, nutrition. But I think what's interesting about this time that we live in is that your generation is very focused on this. It's a normal conversation. You're drinking less. You're looking at wellness experiences. Where you spend your money is a very different place. So it may seem obvious to you, but I could tell you right now, for many generations that came before you, it wasn't obvious. And that's what's really exciting is like, this isn't going anywhere. I think even when I go to my gym, you know, an anecdotal observation is like, it's more young people and it's really cool. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I could talk to you for a long time, Anaelle, but if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to get in touch with you, they want to see the type of work, or maybe just have a conversation, where would you like them to go?
If you're interested in UltraHuman, you can go onto the UltraHuman website. But if you would like to contact me directly, I'm happy for you to email me. It's my first name dot my last name. So ANAELLE.OIKNINE at ultrahuman.com.
Right on.
And thank you
Anaelle,
so much,
thank you.
Eric, for having me.
Yeah, this was an absolute pleasure. Keep up the great work.
Absolutely.
Hey, friends, thank you for tuning into this very special women's health series presented by Groe Solutions. We're purposely dropping the series during National Women's Health Week because this conversation is critically important and, frankly, a little overdue. So please share it with someone in your life. Better yet, pick up the phone and call her. Subscribe to The Future of Fitness wherever you listen. Leave us a review if you found value here. And if you want to learn more, go to futureoffitness.co. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.